Outdoor Living, and today I'm going to be talking about dropper loop fishing for rockfish and lingcod. Fishing a dropper loop for rockies especially can be the easiest and one of the most effective techniques. I think it's best to fish a dropper loop when you're in 150 feet of water or more, because when you're shallower there's lots of baits, tubes, and swim baits, all kinds of stuff on the market that can catch you just as much fish, if not more. When you're fishing over 150 feet, it's really hard to get those lures, baits, and jigs down. That's why I like to use the dropper loop. Dropper loop's a very popular technique. I'm sure a lot of you guys know of it, but I'm gonna talk about it more today, show some clips of me catching some fish on it, and show pretty much all my knowledge I have about it and the experience I have using it, and share it with you guys. Before I show you guys how to rig it, I'm gonna go over the tackle that I like to use. I like to use 58-pound mono as my leader when I'm fishing somewhere where I know there's a good chance I'm gonna be getting a lingcod. But if not, then 30 I like way better for rockfish. It's way easier to tie knots. For hooks, when I'm fishing squid or a flank of mackerel or a flank of sardine, I really don't think it's that big of a deal for the hooks. I like to just use a 1/0 mustad. Works fine for me. I don't really ever have any problems. But when I'm using live bait, I like to bump it up to something a little bit bigger, maybe a 2/0. This is a Japanese company. I had a lot of success on the last trip I was on fishing with these hooks with live anchovy. They seem to have a really good hookup ratio. This is optional, but if you want, you can have a snap swivel at the bottom of your line so you can snap different weights on and change out different weights as you move between different depths of water and experience different types of current. I actually don't like to use the snap swivel to clip my weights on. I actually use a loop, and I'll show you guys that in a second. For video purposes, I'm gonna be using this white braid just so you guys can see it, but usually this would be mono. I like to start one end of my mono leader will be a swivel that I'll go ahead and tie on there, and then I'll tie the other end to my main line just so I don't experience a ton of line twists. I used to tie a braid to mono knot from my leader to my main line, and I'd experience a ton of line twists and it would cause tangles and it was super annoying. So I think having the swivel there is at least gonna reduce it, because when you're bringing those rockfish up, everything starts spinning and the weight spins and it makes these big spins, and the swivel, what's nice about it, it's just gonna spin with it so you don't end up with a bunch of line twists. So maybe about 1 foot or 1.5 feet from the swivel, I like to tie my first dropper loop. Here in California, we can use 2 hooks when fishing for rockfish. I don't know what the regulations are for Washington and the rest of the West Coast. I think it's 2 for you guys as well, but not sure about that. Anyway, let's tie my first dropper loop right here. I get maybe about 1 foot in between each hand, loop it around each other. Go ahead and grab the one end of the loop, it doesn't matter, and just start looping it around each other. It depends on how heavy of leader you're using, but with my 30-pound leader I usually use, I can go about 4 times, and that makes it perfect. So I went ahead and did it about 4 times. See how you have a loop in the middle with twists on each side. Then take your loop here and put it through the hole you made from twisting and pull that through. And if you want the loop to be bigger at the beginning, you should probably put like 2 feet in between each hand when you're looping it around each other. And usually this would be the time with mono, I'd wet each end with saliva so it cinches down way easier. And I usually grab my mouth with this piece so I can use my hands to pull that together like that. So that's what your finished product is kind of going to look like that. It cinches down a lot easier with braid. Usually you have to use some saliva with mono to get it on there better. And this is about the average size dropper loop that I like to use. And then I go ahead and tie another one about 1 foot down right here. And then usually when I start off on a spot, I'll put 2 different kinds of baits on each hook so I can figure out what they're wanting. And then about another foot below that, you have the end of your line, which is gonna be either a snap swivel that you'll connect your weight to, or what I like to do is a loop, just because if you get snagged, you're not losing a snap swivel as well, which the loop is just a simple sturgeon's knot. And then cut that tag end, and I'll show you guys my weight and what I like to do for that. This is a 5-ounce pyramid weight. I do not recommend this when you're rocky fishing, because usually the bottom is going to be pretty hard, and this is meant to get stuck in the bottom of the ocean. So I don't recommend that. I don't have any on me right now, but I used to use these cannonball sinkers that worked really well. They were a perfect ball, and they'd pretty much just roll around off everything, wouldn't get stuck at all. But if I don't have those, then I'll use a torpedo sinker. This is a 10-ounce. like this, and I'll show you guys how to loop that through. It's really easy. Literally just stick your loop through there and then wrap it around the bottom just like that, and then pull it tight, and then it's pretty easy to switch out too. You can just undo that loop. I have an old rusty hook here I'm going to use to show you guys how to loop on to the dropper loops. It's really simple. Just push the loop through the eye of the hook. Sometimes it can be hard, especially if you have heavier line. Just like that, and it's the same as the weight. Put the loop around the hook like that. Just like that. And it stays on there really nice when you have when I use my 30-pound test leader. But when you're using 50, it gets really frustrating because it's so stiff. It wants to like push the hook off, and it gets a weird action and can even come off if a fish bites it. That's why I like to use 30 or lighter once again. I like to use the Penn Fathom. There's a lot of other reels, conventional reels out there that'll work just as well, but this is just the one I use. And the main reason is you want to have a lot of line capacity on that reel so you can hold a lot of braid to tug these rockfish up from 300, 350 feet, 400 feet of water. This Fathom gets a 5:0 to 1 gear ratio, which is pretty good, and it's also nice to have the big rubber handle when you're cranking so much and so hard. This is the rod that I've been using for dropper loop fishing, and it's an older rod called the Invincible Panther, and I don't think rod is really that big of a deal. Just make sure you have something that's a nice balance between super flimsy but not too stiff. You want something that can hold up a 12 to 14 ounce weight when you're fishing those deep water. This is a 20 to 50 pound test, 7 foot, and it seems to work pretty perfectly. Pretty simple to fish the dropper loop. The main thing is keep it on the bottom. Rockfish hang out on the bottom, lingcod hang out on the bottom. Keep it down there so you can get hookups. You can jig it as well, but if you're using live bait, I wouldn't recommend jigging it. The live bait already has enough action swimming around by itself. But if you're using maybe a strip of squid and you want to jig it so it flutters in the water, that works as well. I haven't really experienced a difference in between jigging it and just keeping it down there. But once you get it down there after the initial drop, you may have to let out more line as the current pushes it away from the boat. Keep it on the bottom. That's the main thing. When using squid, I seem to experience getting more rockfish bites. And when you use live bait, you have that chance at getting that lingcod or maybe that bigger rockfish. But so far, my favorite bait for dropper loop fishing has been anchovy. It's worked really well. I just used it last time for the first time, and I think it works super well. It's big enough to where it can get bit by some big rockfish, and it also catches medium ones as well because anchovies aren't super big. Another tip for you guys, cast against the current or the drift, so by the time it makes it to the bottom, you're in a better spot to set the hook rather than 30 yards away from the boat getting drifted really hard. In my experiences, when you're over 250 feet, you're mostly gonna come up with a vermilion, aka red rockfish, a yellow eye, a chili pepper, a starry rockfish. These are the ones with the vibrant colors. You can catch lingcod in this deep as water as well, but if you're on a good spot, a lot of times Rockies will get to it first and start nipping at your bait and taking it. My best luck lingcod fishing has been with different lures like tubes, swim baits, and flat falls in less than 250 feet of water where you can get those lures down.